The surface of anything seldom reveals the real treasure hidden beneath. In our last video, we said our focus in these videos is about the receiver end of the communication model of a sender and a receiver. By saying this, I wanted to let you know that this series is going to focus more on listening than just knowing how to communicate. That's really just the surface. Let's go beyond this basic surface description of communication and listening, and in this video, focus on a concept called relational communication. What occurs when you effectively listen is really a group of complex, interrelated occurrences. You cannot lay out listening like a flat two-dimensional object. It's more like what's happening inside of an old Swiss pocket watch with all the intersecting gears, except it's a round, multi-dimensional environment. Okay, enough with the metaphors. We should describe what we mean by relational communication and what that has to do with effective listening. Relational communication focuses specifically on face-to-face human interaction. This is talking about what goes on mentally and physically during the individual listening process. When you start talking with someone, you also immediately begin listening. You're watching the nonverbals of the other person. You're looking for clues. You see, we listen while we talk. You cannot separate the two events in live communication. But beyond this, relational communication focuses on what goes on between people when communication is occurring. Meaning is not guaranteed just because you have a sender who sends a message and there's a listener who hopefully receives the message. The complex process of communication depends on three key elements. And if we want to be successful in communicating and listening, we must consider these three elements. Now, I told you that there would be a final exam question in each video. Well, here it is. I'll ask you about these three key elements. The first is perceptual differences. I can say, I love music. But my personal perception of what makes good music is influenced by my culture, my experiences, and maybe my outlook on the world. We all create a world or reality that serves as a filter for any new experiences or listening events. Someone can say they love music, but what they are referring to is something entirely different than what I perceive to be as enjoyable music. The second key element to consider in communicating and listening is the concept of negotiating meanings and sense-making. We cannot assume that when we start talking about how valuable families are, that the other person will understand what we're really trying to say. Their experience with family may be very different than ours. The communication and listening process is really sort of a dance where two willing partners attempt to negotiate and explore what the other means when she or he discusses something. It takes conscious work to make sense. We must be slow to judgment and willing to negotiate the process of finding the real meaning behind the words that the other is speaking. The third key element to consider in communicating and listening is the concept of communication framework. This is similar to the concept of how we recognize words on a page. We do not always look at every letter. Our minds become used to the visual shape of words, and we can rapidly guess at what the word is and continue reading. We do the same in our listening. We often base our understanding of what the other person is communicating to us based on previous conversation or frameworks. This can often work for us in quickly understanding, but it can also lead to misunderstandings when you assume the wrong thing. The key question for effective listeners is, am I paying attention to the right cues? One more thing. When you put relational communication all together, it's a strong reminder that communicating and listening are intrinsically interrelated. You cannot separate the two. It reminds us that communication and effective listening doesn't just happen. It happens because two people want communication to occur. See you in the next video.